Welcome back in another video where we're going to be creating this awesome Notes app. And it's going to be a full stack app, meaning that we're going to use MongoDB for storing our database or our notes, sorry, but also we're going to use React in the front end and also Tailwind to be able to style our application. So this is our sample app as you can see. So we're having some notes over here and also we're having the categories to be able to filter the notes by categories as you can see. So everything is working fine. And notice that because where the travel category shares two notes, so that's why we're having these notes. And let's say that I want to add the note into the travel category. So I'm going to add some text over here and also make sure to add the category where you want to place your note in and hit save. And notice right now into the travel, we're having a new note over here. And if I load the page again, just to make sure that the note is persistent and everything is working well, notice that our note is over here. And let's say that we want to modify our node. So I'm just typing modify and modify over here. And let's say we want to place it in another category. I choose the adventure and hit save. So after we're having this little notification and we're using a toast hot a library to be able to use the notification. And when I click on travel, notice that the note has been modified successfully, even if I clicked on the travel category. And let's say I want to delete this note. So we're having again this notification. So when I click on yes, the note has been deleted successfully. And if I load the page again, and after loading we're not gonna find it anymore, so everything is working fine. So we're gonna learn a lot of things into this project. So if you want to learn how to do this and to create this project, stick with me till the end of this video. Hi, welcome back. So in our Visual Studio Code, we are for our app, we are going to use the Next.js. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is how to be able to install it. So it's very easy. So go to their website. So that's the link, and just copy this command and go back to your terminal and paste it over here. And next, you will have these questions. So just stick with the default because we're going to use Tailwind CSS for the styling, and also we're not going to use the type script. And the next thing that I'm going to show you for the font, and I like the Poppins font, so you can choose wherever you want. And basically, how to be able to install it, go to the layout page and go over here. So add the Poppins over here and also create this constant. I called it Poppins, and you will be able to use the Poppins object that we imported from here. And those are the elements that we are going to use. And then at the bottom, inside the body, make sure to add in the class name the actual Poppins that object or element that we created, and make sure to add the variable over here and go to the global.css and make sure to add those class names. Basically, those are going to be the utility classes that we're going to use inside our components, and that's for the font that we're going to use. And also, we are going to use the Hyper UI to be able to create faster the components that we want. So So let's go back to the VS Code and I'm going to show you the structure. So inside the page, so I already created another component. I called it app, and this is where we are going to add all the components of our app. And the reason why I created that in another component, because we are going to use the context API. So that's why I did so. And over here, as you noticed, I already created a component. I called it title. So that's so the first let's show you how it is looking into the DOM. So this is our title that I created, and also for the box that I created here, I'm going to show you uh, the the actual styling that I did for it. So I just set the width and the height like this, and the background is white. And to make the edges rounded, I use these utility classes and of course the shadow. And for the title, I use the font awesome icon library to be able to add this note sticky icon. So it's very simple how to set it up. So go to their website over here. So that's again their link, and just so the first step, make sure to install it via this command, and go in the next step, go to the free ESV icon page and install and copy and paste all of those commands. And the third thing, uh, copy this and paste it in your terminal and hit enter. So once your Font Awesome library is installed in your project, then you can be able to use them. So importing the Font Awesome icon library, and also I'm importing the icon. So that's the icon, and those are just utility classes to be able to style it. And this is for the actual title. And the next component that I created is this tabs component. So where we are going to be select or to be able to select the notes based on the categories. And so the first thing that I did to save a little bit of time in this component creation. So the first thing that you must do in the Hyper UI, click on the application UI, then go to the tabs, and I choose just the first one. So click on View and click on JSX since we're using React, and copy this and paste it over here. And did I deleted some of the things, like I deleted the this, and also since I'm going to use the button, and I did use the button, but also I deleted some of these things, and I changed some of the utility classes just for this for now, because I'm going to add other things. And to be able to have this look, I just did the background over here as red, and also I did some I added the left padding and the right padding for this all button. But again, it's just temporary, because once we get this functionable, we are going to do some of the modification in terms of styling. And also for for these buttons, I did add the hover element here. So when we are hovering over these tabs, we're having this kind of effect. Next, I added this little button over here to be able to add note. So again, we are going to use the Hyper UI, and the thing that I did, so I went to the buttons components page, and I just choose this, and we're going to copy this code and go to the title component, and after adding this, make sure to add another div and put the divs for the icon and the actual title uh, inside this new div, and then you can add this button div over here. And we are going to use flex and justify flex so that they can be positioned like this. And again, into this new button, instead of using a tag, I use just a button. And also I made some changes in utility classes. I just changed the colors. Also, I changed the text size. And here I deleted some of the utility classes that I'm not going to use. And that's for this actual button. Next, I created this note. So that's going to be the design of each note. So the first thing that I did in our code, so over here, the app.js, I created another component. I called it notes area. So let's go to the notes area. So here I'm adding the single note component because we are going to add other components like this. But for uh, to be able to create first the actual note, so I'm gonna just add one and then we are gonna add others. So for the single note component, so this is the actual body of the component. So there are a lot of things here, so I'm gonna go through. So I'm gonna go through the most important elements here, and I added some comments here. So of course, the actual parent, I added the flex display, but also I added the colon, flex colon, so that the items are positioned like this vertically. So for the header, this is the header, and also I'm using the Phantasm icon library again to be able to use this icon. And also notice that I'm using this inside this actual div, and I set the width and the height as fixed because first I don't know why, but the actual icon gets bigger. So to be able to fix this, so I added the this icon inside this div, and this is the actual title notes, and this is for the note, and this is for the category. So those are just fixed and hard-coded text, but once we start working with the database and actually updating the adding and deleting and modifying the notes, we are going to modify that accordingly. Next, I added some notes, and this is how they are looking because we used the grid layout for that. So let's go back to our code and let's go to notes area. So I added some other single notes. So there is a mistake here. I need to add the L here. So anyways, and to be able to create this grid layout, so I had to use I have so I used the display as grid, and also I used this grid template column. So that's the CSS, and that's the tailwind CSS utility class to be able to use that. And make sure to use the overflow auto because we don't want to have the nodes go over the actual container of our app. So that's why we did use the overflow auto, and also to be able to have this scroll bar. So right now our Notes app is taking shape, and that is looking pretty good for now. So the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to create the actual window to be able to add a note. So this is the final design of the window that we are going to use to be able to add a note. And but also we are going to use the same window to be able to edit a note. So over here, I just added the title, the content, and also the categories, and it's going to be in a form of tags, and that's something that I'm going to create. Like for example, if I type in projects and I hit enter, it's going to be a tag. So that's something that I'm going to create. But for now, I want to just show you the design of this actual window. So the first thing I did is I created this component. I called it note window, and this is the actual body. And also make sure in the app.js to add it over here and import the actual component. And also make sure to add the relative position in this parent div. And also in the note window, make sure to add the absolute. And those are the left and the top properties to be able to position them at the center of the body or of the window. And for the model header, this is uh, its elements, and that's the actual element of the notebook input. And this is for the content area. So I'm using here a text area inside the instead of an input because we want to be able to add a lot of text, sorry. And this is for the text area. So that's something that I'm going to work on. And this is for the body, for the button, sorry. And for the button, to be able to position it at the extreme right. So what I did, I created a div and I used the flex display and I used the justify content flex and to be able to position it at this place. And this is the actual utility class for the button. So that's the design of the window that we are going to use to add a note. And this is design of the tags functionality that we are going to use to add categories for our note. And we're having some elements here, and we're having an input over here, and we're wrapping all of that inside a simple container, and we're adding this little border to be able to know where those elements exist. So this is the code that I added or I created to be able to have this. And I just created the functional component inside the note window. And actually, I'm using this variable state. So it's going to be an array, and we are going to loop through each item. And this is how we are uh, rendering our elements over here. So we're using the UL tags, and inside of it, we're using the ELA tags for each element. And so that's going to be the text of the tag, and that's going to be the icon of each element. So doing that, it's going to be, uh, we want to have our tags or categories dynamic, so we can be able to add them and remove them. So now I'm going to start working on the functionalities, meaning that when I'm typing here and hit enter, I can be able to add them over here. And of course, they are going to be updated in our tags variable state. And also we can be able to remove the tag that we want when we click on this button. So now we can be able to add tags and remove them or categories. So I'm going to show you how it is working. So I'm going to add some categories over here. And notice, like for example, if I want to add a category that is already added, I can't. And I'm going to add another tag. And notice we can't be able to add any tag, and the input field is hidden. And of course, we can delete the tags if we want to. So let's go back to our code. I'm going to explain the functionalities that I added. So we're going to start by the add-in function. So we're going to use the on key up because that's event listener that will listen to our keyboard. And so every time we are typing on our keyword, we are going to trigger this add tag, and we are going to pass in the event object because that's what we are going to use to extract the actual key and the value that we typed inside our input. And those are the checks, and only if all of those elements or checks are true, then we can be able to update our tags. So the first thing that we need to make sure that only if we hit enter, the next check, make sure that our input is not empty and the length is going to be restricted to 4. And also this is where we are going to avoid duplicates by using the index of method. And basically what we're doing, we are looking if we are returning any index on our actual tags array of the current value that we typed in. -1 meaning that it doesn't exist. So if all of those things are checked, then we can be able to update our tags variable by using the set tags, and then we are going to set our input placeholder empty. And next, over here, to be able to hide the input, we're going to use this condition. And if it is less than 4, we are going to show it. So if it is not, it's going to be hidden. So that's basically the logic of it. And let's go to the remove tag. So we are going to click on the close icon. So we're going to go to the font awesome icon tag over here. So add this on-click event listener, and we are going to trigger the remove tags function when we click on it. So that's basically what we're doing to be able to delete our the category that we want from the tags variable. So we're using uh, the filter method. And basically what we're doing here, we are extracting and we are filtering the actual item that we want. And we are kind of extracting all the items and not the item that we want to delete. And then we are setting the focus to our input field. And the next component that I created is this drop-down menu. And the reason why I created it, because we want, when we click on the 3 dots, we want to have this drop down and folds, and to be able to modify or delete the actual note. So in our VS Code, I created a new file. I called it drop down. So this is the actual body of the whole drop down. So we're going to use again the font awesome icon library for the icons and make sure to import them over here. And we're creating the menu in a form of an array. And here is the parent container of all dropdown of the whole dropdown, sorry. And notice that we're using the fixed property because we want to be at the top of all the elements, but also uh, we want to be able to move it at any position that we want because it's going to be open depending on when we clicked over here. So if we clicked over here, we need this to be opened in this position. So that's why we use the fixed position. And also make sure in the app the parent container is relative because we already did so for the actual note window. So let's go back to the drop down, and over here we are using the map function and we're looping through each element over here to be able to render uh, each element, modify and delete, and this is the body of each element. And again, we're using the font awesome icon library, and we are extracting for each element its own property. For here, the icon object, and for here the actual name, and we're having this result. So we're gonna make this little application kind of live, and we're gonna start by the first functionality, which is showing the window to be able to add notes that we just created. So when I click on add note, so we're having it here, and when I click on close, it is closed. So the first step that to be able to do that, I created the context API. Basically, the context API is kind of a box that you will put all the variables that are going to be shared across all the components. And that will help us to avoid the uh, prompts drilling and to be able to share all the variables across components very easily. So that's why what I use to be able to do that. So the first thing that you must do, you need to create a new file. I call it context API, and make sure to add the use client since it is a client component. So I created the context first by using the create context function, and I create a function called global provider. And basically what we're doing, we are returning the global context that we created with the provider. And this is where we are going to put all the variables that are going to be shared across all the components. And over here we are to be able to accept the child components between the global context provider, we need to add the children. So that's why we added over here as an argument, and to consume it, we added it here. And to be able to consume our context API or our context that we created, so we created the custom hook. I called it a use global provider, and we are returning the use context with the global context. And to be able to use that, so the first thing that I did, go to the page file and make sure to add the global provider and wrap it around the app component that holds all the child components that we're having here, and make sure to import it over here to be able to use it. And so the first thing that I did, I went to the title component. This is where we're having the actual button to be able to add notes. So we're gonna go to the button tag. So what I did here, I created a new function. I called it open window note function. And to be able to use the variables inside the context API, so we're gonna call the use global provider, and then we are going to extract those variables that we want to use. And to be able, because we are going to use the open window note in the note window over here, because this is what we are going to rely on to be able to whether open or make the window visible or not. So these variables are kind of at the top level of our application, and every component can access to because of the context API. So when we click on, because it is set to false initially over here, so when we click on here, we are going to set it to true, and then we are going to go to the note window, and we are using the turning operator over here. And to be able to do that, make sure to add this curly braces at the extreme, at the class names, and also add the template strings, and to be able to use the turning operator. So if it is true, we are going to make it visible, and if it is not, the opacity is going to be 0, and it's going to be invisible. So I added the opacity to have this kind of smooth transition when it opens up. So that's why I use the transition all. So that's basically how we can be able to create that functionality. And the next thing that I work on this little window So I worked on the validation, like for example, all the inputs are empty, and if I hit save, we're gonna have this error message. So we need to fill in all the inputs if we want to save. So I'm gonna add some elements over here, and when I hit the save button, we're not having any error. And when I close the actual window and I click and I open it again, so all the fields are empty to be able to create a note. So let's go back to our code and I'm going to explain how I did this. And I'm going to start from the actual tags component. And the first thing that I did, I took the so let's go over here and I took, as you can see, we're not having here the text array inside of the input text, but we're having some arguments because we want to use them at the top level inside the parent component. So I added them over here and actually to be able to use them, so I added them as props. Uh, that's the actual input text functional component. So I added them into props, and actually I used the tags prop over here, and also I used the set tags prop, and it worked as a callback uh, function that updating the set tags over here. So that's the first change that I did. And also it's going to help me for the validation because I'm having right now three elements and I want them to be inside one function. So that's why I did this. So so we are going to go to the save button and I added the on-click event listener, so that's the actual name of the function submit save button. So let's go up here to the actual function. So those are the checks. So I'm checking the text inputs. So we're having two elements, note title and note content. So I'm using the trim to be able to delete in a space and to not count space as empty characters. And of course, if they are length of 0, and also I'm using the tags dot length property since the tags is an array. So if all of those uh, checks are true, we're gonna show this message error and we are going to return we are going to use the keyword return to be able to exit the function and not execute this code. So if everything goes great, so we are going to create a new object and we are storing all the properties and the properties, the elements, and also we are storing the tags inside the categories property inside the new note object. And I'm just logging the actual note, new note to be able to know everything was going fine. So the next thing that I'm going to work on, actually I'm going to add the actual note inside here. But before we can be able to add the notes, so I did some updates over here. So as you can see right now, we're having these notes that are different, and that's because here over here in the context API, I created. So let's open it up. I created the all nodes variable state where we're going to be storing our all nodes, and also just temporarily, I created another file. I called it nodes data. So this is our nodes. So we're having, so that's the data structure of each object or each node. So we're having the ID, the node name, the node content, the categories, and the date creation. And here in the context API, make sure to add them over here inside the value. And the all nodes and the set all nodes, we add them inside an object. And just for organization purpose, because we're going to add other variables as we move on in our project, and it's going to be very hard to track them. So that's why I did that. And in the notes area, sorry, in the notes area where we're going to be using the all nodes, first we are uh, calling the nodes object, and then we are destructing this nodes object, and we are just using the all nodes since in this content or in this component we are going just to render the nodes, and we're using the map function in the all nodes since it is an array, and then we are using the single node component, and we are passing the single node object. So let's go to the single node. So um, I did a lot of things here to be able to show each node. So I'm going to explain these functions. So in the single node, so make sure to add these props over here. So I added the key and I put it here, and this is the single node object that we are going to use. So over here we use the date creation to be able to show or the date creation property to be able to show the date creation. We use the node's name property over here, the node content, and also in the categories section, since the categories is an array, we're going to map through them to be able to show each category. So that's the final result. And also in terms of styling, um, in the content or not content, make sure to add this fixed height over here, and you can play with it and change it depending on how it is looking into your DOM. Another thing that I want to show you over here, so I'm using these functions. So for the first function, this function, it's gonna enable us to be able to convert the dates uh, from this new date object to a string. Um, let's go back to the single node component. So that's the actual function to be able to convert that, and make sure to call this format date over here. And for this function, what we're doing basically to avoid having this overflow of the text content if it is pretty long vertically, to limit that. So we're gonna limit the length of the string, and we're adding this three dots over here. So that's basically what we're having here. And the reason why we're not having for this content node because the length of it is inferior than 40 characters. And now we can be able to add nodes. So I'm going to click on this button. So let's call the node my first node as a title, and I'm going to just type in test over here, and notice that we're using line breaks, and also I'm going to add some categories. So I'm going to add another one, project, and the node has been created. And also we're having this toast notification telling us that the node has been successfully created. And let's go back to our code. So in the note window, the first thing that you must do here, so since we're going to use all notes again, and make sure to add this line to be able to get them from the context API. And in the submit save button function, so that's the code that we are going to use to be able to add this note inside our application. So the first thing that I did in the new note object, I made some adjustments over here. I just changed the name of properties to match the ones that are over here. And also in the date creation, I used the date object to create our current date. And here we are going to just add the note inside the all notes variable state, and we are going to update it by using the set all notes variable state. And finally, we are going to just show this successful message, and we are going to close our note window by using this line. And also notice here we didn't lose the line breaks. And the reason, let's go to the single note and go to the this part and make sure to add the white space. So that's the utility class that you need to use to not lose the line breaks over here. And the next thing that I worked on is when I click over here, so we're having this drop down menu shows up, and when I click outside of it, it closes down. So let's go back to the code, and I'm going to start with the context API because this is where we're having all the variables scroll across all the app. So the first thing that I did, I created this a new variable state open drop down, and of course it's set up and drop down variable state to be able to change this variable state. And what I did, like the notes object, I put them inside the drop down toggle just for readability. And let's go to the single note because this is where we are going to trigger the up and drop down. But before we can use it, we need to add these two lines to be able to use the up and drop down. So we are going to call the drop down toggle from the context API. And since it is an object that has these two elements, we are going to extract them, and we are going to use the set up and drop down to be able to change the up and drop down variable state. So let's delete that because we're not going to use it. And over here in the headers node in this part, so we are going to go to the three dots part, and we are going to create the on-click event listener. So that's the function that's it's going to be triggered. So here we are going to just change the up and drop down variable state by using the set up and drop down variable state, and we are setting it to true. And for this, I'm going to explain that for just a second. And let's go to the single note to the actual drop down. So we're going to do the same thing over here to be able to use the up and drop down variable state. And I'm using the use ref hook to be able to access to the actual drop down into the DOM, and make sure to add this over here, over this parent div. And this is where we're handling the logic. When we click outside of the drop down, it's gonna close. So when the actual drop down is called, whenever it is called, we are going to add the click event listener to the whole document. And it's gonna clean things up. So once this event listener is added, we are going to add this logic to be able to create this functionality when we click outside of the drop-down, it's going to be closed. And to make that work, make sure to add this because that's gonna stop the propagation of the click event listener to this element because it's gonna help us to use it again to be able to close the actual drop down. So that's basically the logic of open it up and closing it down when we want to, when we click on this and we click outside of it. So the next thing that we are going to work on, we need to position the drop down whenever we click over here or any place when we're having new nodes. And also make sure to add the open drop down variable state inside the parent div of the component. Make sure to add it here, and we're using the turning operator. So if it is true, it's going to be set to visible. Otherwise, it's going to be invisible. So now when I click over here, as you can see, our drop-down menu is opened up at this position, and the same if I do in here. So in our Visual Studio Code, so the first thing that I did, I went to the context API and I created another variable. So I created the drop-down positions and the set drop-down positions, and we're having the X and Y properties. And so this is where we're gonna store the position of the click. And so when we click over here, we're going to extract the X and Y positions, and we are going to pass them over the drop-down positions, and then we are going to use them by the drop-down function. So over here in the single node functional component, so we're going to use the event object to be able to extract the X and Y properties by using the client X and the Y properties, and then we are going to use the set drop-down positions. And also make sure to add the drop-down positions object over here, and we are going to extract from it the set drop-down positions to be able to update our variable state, which is drop-down positions. And we are passing those variables over here. And then in the drop-down menu, we are going to do the same here at the top to be able to use the drop-down positions variable and go over here and inside the parent div add this. And basically what we're doing, we are just using the left and the top properties, and we are assigning to them the X and the Y properties that we got from the single node, meaning that we got from these two variables. And now we can be able to open the drop down at the clicked position. So once we're having our drop down opens up at the right position, so if I click over here, as you can see here in our console log, this is the node that we selected. And when I click here outside to be able to close the drop down, the variable that we used to set the actual node gets null. So it's gonna work for the same node over here. And when I click outside of it, the same thing happens. Like for now, I just created this component by using the toast notification. So over here, whenever I'm clicking on these buttons, so the actual variable state gets to null again. So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. I'm going to show you how I created this logic. Again, in our context API, I created this new variable. I called it nodes selected. This is where I'm going to store the node that we select when we click on the three dots, and make sure to add them like this over here. And let's go to the single node. This is where the three dots button lives. And over here, make sure to add the single node inside the open drop-down function, because we are going to use it to know which node that we clicked on. So once we're having this information, and also we'll make sure to add it over here as a prop. So once we're having it, we're going to use the set node selected that we are getting from the context API. So make sure to add the node selected object that we created, and then we are going to extract the set node select variable uh, state from the node selected object. So once we click on this, so we are going to have our variable uh, filled with the actual node that we selected, and into the actual drop down, basically we are going to create two things over here. So this logic that handle outside click of the drop down, make sure to set the node selected to null, and also inside the let me go at the bottom, inside the handle option clicked that we just created function inside the on click event listener. So we are passing the actual item that we clicked in. So here we are setting the actual code for only the delete button that we clicked in. So the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to close the dropdown by using this line, and we are again using the toast notification. That's the actual method that we're using, and we are using the components. So we can be able to create our custom components inside this library. So that's a great thing about it. So that's the actual component. So I'm just adding on click event listener here, and I'm using this line to avoid having duplicates of the actual box. And so once I clicked on it, so the the actual line that we're seeing inside the console log, so it is just the so let me go to the context API. So I'm just logging the node selected just to just know everything goes well. Next, we can be able now to delete the note if we want to. So let's click on delete and click on yes. And as you can see, the note has been deleted successfully, and we're having this successful message. So let's go back to our code, and the thing that I did over here, the first thing that I added the all notes and the set all notes because we are going to update our notes array. And also make sure to add the notes object over here, because it contains those two elements, and we are going to extract them to be able to use them. And the second thing that I did, I created the delete note function. And in order to be able to delete the actual note from the array, I use the filter function, and then I'm updating the all notes variable state, and I'm showing this successful message. And this delete not function need to be added here to be triggered whenever I clicked on yes. And the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to work on the modify button. So when I click on the modify, we're going to have this window that we created for the add note. It's going to be changed to edit a note, and then we are going to have all the information of the notes that we clicked on set over here, and then we are going to work on the logic to be able to modify the actual node that we selected. When I click on a node and I click on modify, notice that we're having all the information of the node inside here, and we're having the word edit, even if we are using the same window to add a node. And if I close this and I click on add the node, notice that all the fields are empty and we're having the add word back over here. So to be able to do that, I'm using the node selected variable state to be able to rely on whether we are going to show the edit word or the add word, or even whether we are going to show the information of the nodes that we selected or not. So the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to go to the drop-down functional component and go over here and make sure to add the open drop down over here, because I had a problem, like for example when this drop down menu is opened and I click over here, as you can see the node selected variable is set to null, and the problem was when I clicked again it's set to null again. So in order to avoid this problem, so I add this open drop down over here. So once we fix that, in the same drop-down functional component and inside this function, make sure to add, because we are going to handle the modify option. So in the else statement, so this is where this code is going to be triggered when we click on the modify. So this is going to close the actual drop down, and here we are going to open the note window. So in the note window, so the first thing that you need to add the note selected, since we are going to rely on it to be able to know whether we are editing or adding a new note. And so we are going to start with the actual header. So if the node selected is not null, the actual header will start with edit, otherwise it will start with add. And also inside the use effect hook, so what I did here, I first added this condition. So only if the open window node is opened, if the node selected is null, we are going to set the text fields as empty, and also the targets or the text area is going to be empty. So if it is not, meaning that the node selected is not null, we are going to set the fields by the node selected properties here. The same for the tags. Now we can be able to edit the node that we want. So when I click on modify, so let's add a new word over here. I'm going to add something over here, and let's add another category, and I click save. So now, as you can see, our node has been updated and we're having this toast notification. So let's go to the code, and in the node window functional component, go to the submit save button function. And what we are going to do over here, since we are using one window for adding and editing, and as we know that we are relying on the node selected element to be able to know whether we want to add or edit the actual node. So what I did, I create another if statement. So if the node selected is null, meaning that we are going to add the node, we are going to do all of this to be able to add the note. And if it is not, meaning that we are going to edit the note. So what we're doing here, we are updating our all notes array. So for to ensure immutability, so this is what we're doing. We are going to use the previous state, which is the array, and then we are going to find the index. And based on this index, we are going to change our note. And we are going to set the note title from the text input to the actual property of the note element from its index in this array, and we are going to do the same for the content and the tags. And here we are returning the temp array to be able to ensure the update of the all notes. And then we are closing the actual window, and we are showing this successful message that the note has been updated successfully. And in the categories section over here, as you can see, so all the categories inside the notes, they are shown over here, and they are unique. Notice that a study tag or category is shared between the two nodes, and we're having ones over here. And let's say, for example, if I delete the study and hit save, we're still having the study because it is used by this node. And if we delete it over here and we click save, notice that the study category is not over here. So let's go back to our VS Code to explain what I did to be able to create this functionality. And we are going to start with the context API. And the first thing that I did, I created the unique categories variable state, and I created a new use effect, and the early dependency is going to be on nodes, and we want this to be executed and be dependent on the all nodes. So whenever we are changing the all nodes variable, this is going to be executed to be able to whether delete and add the categories in the categories section. So we are setting first this, we are verifying if the all nodes exist, and then we are using the set object because it helps us, it's going to help us to create the unique items. And here we are looping through each element inside all nodes. And since the categories, it's an array, we're going to use the for each loop. And then we are going to add the category inside the set. And the set will take care of removing the duplicates. And here we are converting the categories set to an array, and then we are updating the unique categories. And also make sure to add them over here because we want to share the unique categories between the categories components. So let's go to the app function, and we are going to go to the categories functional component. And as you can see, we are extracting the unique categories from the context API, from the unique categories object that exists in the context API. And the all button, we're not gonna delete that because it's gonna be fixed. And over here, we are going to use the unique categories array, and then we are going to map through each element, and then we are going to show how many buttons based on the unique categories or the items inside the unique categories. And now we're having this result, and we're having the categories section working perfectly. So now when we click on one of the categories, as you can see, we're having the node that has this category. And the same if I do for the project and for the writing. So the node changed because it has the writing and IDS, and it's going to be the same if we click on the IDS. And if we want to get back all our notes, we are going to click on alls, and all the notes are back. So let's go to the VS Code, and I'm going to show you what I did to be able to have that result. So we're going to start with the context API, and the first thing that I did, I created a new variable over here. I called it initial all nodes. Since we are going to change the all nodes variable state, so we need a copy of it before we can change it. Uh, and also, if we want, for example, to get all our nodes back, we can be able to click on the, we can be able to use that to have all these nodes. And the next thing that I did, I went to the categories functional component and over here. So I added this on-click event listener, and also I added this function, and I'm getting the category that I clicked on. And also notice here we're having another function called filter nodes by category, and this is from the context API. And make sure first to add it over here. And let's go back to the context API, and this is our function. So I'm using this just to know how to be able to create the filtering algorithm, which is this simple code. And this is the filter nodes by category that we used in the categories functional component, and make sure to add it over here to be able to consume it. And this is actually the code to be able to filter the nodes by category. And notice here we're not using the all nodes variable state. We're using the initial all nodes because this is the static one. And we are updating our all nodes since we are using it over here to be able to re-render our application. And also make sure to add the initial all nodes and the set initial all nodes over here because we're going to use them in other components, and one of them is the node window. So when we're adding a node, we need to add them in both variable states. So over here into the submit save button function, so add this set initial all nodes. Also, we're going to add our new node inside the initial all nodes variable state via the set all initial all nodes, and also make sure to add them over here to be able to use them. And also another place where we are going to use uh, these variables is in the categories functional component. And we're not going to use them directly over here, but I created a function. I called it all clicked category. So here we are triggering it, but not from this component, but from the context API. So this is our function. And what we are doing here, we are setting all nodes variable state by the initial all nodes to get back all the nodes that we initially loaded up, and make sure to add the all clicked category function over here to be able to use it inside the categories functional component. And one thing that I forgot to mention, or two things inside the context API, make sure to add the set initial all nodes over here. Because this is what's going to be triggered when the application was first initially loaded up, and also for the for this part, because this is where we are getting the unique categories. So over here inside the for each loop, we're not going to use all nodes because it's going to be a variable, it's going to change. So we need to use the initial all nodes because that's the static one. So make sure to add it here. So when we click over here, this it's not going to change. So now when we click on the categories, notice that the background changes, and now we can be able to track visually which category that we clicked on for all the categories over here, including the all button. So in Visual Studio, go to the categories functional component and to be able to track the category that we clicked on, make sure to add first this variable state collect category, because this is what we're going to use to be able to rely on to change the background or not. And over here in this section, we're having this handle collect category where we are getting the category that we clicked in or clicked on. So inside this functional component, we are going to change the collect category, and we are going to uh, use the collect category that we passed from the unique categories map function. And when we are going to change this, we are going to rely upon it to be able to change the background over here of each category. So if this condition is true, meaning that the category that we clicked on equals the category that exists in the unique categories array, we are going to change the background, and the text is going to be white. Otherwise, the background is going to be transparent, and the text it's going to be red again. And for the all button, we are going to do the same thing. And the thing that the condition that we are going to use is we are going to know or to check if the clicked category is equal to null or not. So notice here when we click on the all button, we are going to set the clicked category to null, and we are going to use the same logic over here to be able to change the background of the all button. And once it is null, because of this turning operator, like when we click on muting, for example, and click on all of these buttons will go back to their initial styling. So this, so that's what this logic is doing. And the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to take these variables collect category and set collect category into the context API, because we want to use them in a broader level of our app because that's going to serve us later on. And the only thing that you need to do, make sure to add these variables over here, and also don't forget to delete them from the categories functional component. And to be able to use them as we did for the all variables, make sure to add them over here. And in the categories, make sure to add them over here to be able to use them inside this functional component. And for the variables here, since we're using the same names, we're not going to touch anything over this body. So now let's work on the delete function since we're having this filtering system, and it's kind of a little bit tricky to create, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do so. Like let's say, for example, if I click on the ideas and if I delete this note, so we're still in the ideas category and we're still having one note left. And if I delete this, so notice that the ideas section is not here because we're not having any node that has this category. And because the ideas is completely gone, we're back to the all section, and we're having these two nodes left. So that's what we're having in our application. So it's working well. So to be able to create that, go to the drop-down functional component and make sure to have the all nodes or all these variables over here because we are going to use them, of course. And in the delete node function, so this is the algorithm that we're using to be able to delete the actual node that we want. And since we're having right now two nodes, the all nodes, it's going to be changing, and the initial nodes, it's the kind of backup, and the static area that we're gonna rely on for the categories, for example. So make sure to add these to be able to delete the actual node simultaneously from the both areas, and we are going to actually uh, actualize the all nodes and initial all nodes variable states. And over here, we want to know, like I showed you over here, when this category is, we're not having any nodes in this category. So we want um, to go to the all section. So that's why we use the collect category and the set collect category in the context API. So here we are using it, and to know um, that we're not having any node left, we're going to use the filter all nodes dot length. So if it's empty, so we are going to set the collect category to null. And to be able to go automatically to the all section, so what we're doing here in the context API, or sorry, in the dropdown over here, we are going to use the use effect hook. And this is going to be only triggered when the clicked category variable changes. So because we set it to null, and if it is to null, we are going to set all nodes to the initial nodes to show all the nodes available or left over here. And of course, as I mentioned in the categories over here, so the background of the all node, it's going to be changing because we relied on the collect category as I showed you. Next, we are going to go to the second operation, which is adding a node. So I'm gonna select the IDS category, and I'm going to type in node 4 as the title. So let's type in test, and I'm going to use the IDS category to be able to be shown inside the IDS category. So hit save, and notice right now we're having it over here. And if we check all the categories, is not over here. And if we click on the all, so we're having it with all the nodes. And let's say, for example, if we want to add another node, so I'm going to just use tests, and I'm going to, I want to be in both categories, such IDS and project. So let's do that. And inside the IDS, we're having it over here, and the project, we're having it over here. And if we delete it from the IDS, so it's not in the IDS section, and if we go to the project, it's not over here. And let's say, for example, just for testing, if I delete this, the IDS section is not over here because we're not having a node that has the writing category. So as you can see, everything is working fine without any bug. So in the VS Code, the only thing that we are going to do, and the change that we are going to do, since we're using the initial all nodes variable state, under the set all nodes, make sure to add this, and also make sure to add the set all nodes over here. And also one update that I did for the ID, because to avoid having any problems when we're adding or when we want to do some modification to the node. So I'm using this simple library to be able to generate IDs, and so make sure to install this, and also make sure to import this line, and to be able to generate IDs. So I just using this function over here. And for the modification, so I'm going to show you how to be modify the actual node, and everything is working fine. So let's add something over here, and I'm going to delete that and hit save. I noticed that the node has been modified successfully and we're still in the IDS category. And if we go to the project, the node doesn't appear over here. So for the logic of modifying the node, so we're going to go to this portion after the else. And so this is the actual adjustment that I did to be able to modify the node. Notice that for each change we're using uh, for each change we're using the set all nodes separately from the set initial all nodes to avoid any problems whatsoever. But the problem over here is they are duplicated. And to be able to solve that, and that's what I'm gonna do, is I'm going to put this over function, and then we're gonna use the same function, or we're gonna call the same function in the set all nodes and also in the set initial all nodes. And now this part looks a lot cleaner. So as I said, what I did is I took the actual code that we're having inside here and inside here, and I put it inside this update nodes area. And since we're going to use three variables, the previous or three objects, previous state and text inputs and tags. So we put them over here. And in the set all nodes and the set initial all nodes, we're calling this function, and we are passing those three elements, previous states and text inputs and tags. So that way, or this way, we're going to be able to save a lot of space over here and make the code a lot more cleaner. And now the front end is completed and it is working well, and that's the main thing. So we are going to work next on the backend, and meaning that we need to set things up with the MongoDB. And also we are going to create our routes for CRUD operations, adding and modifying and deleting uh, the nodes that we're having here. And of course, we're going to make the connection between the database and the front end. Here we are in the MongoDB dashboard, and I already created the project. So the first thing that you will have to do is just go here and click on the new project and just follow the steps. I'm not going to do this because it's very easy and straightforward. And you can check that out in their documentation, how to be able to create a project and just follow the steps there to create it. So let's go back to our MongoDB dashboard. And once you created this project, and what we are going to do, and after creating the cluster, we are going to click on the connect button. So after clicking on it, you will have this uh, window, and just click on the MongoDB for VS Code, and you will just copy this. So after copying it, you will go, we will go back to our VS Code and create the .env file. So and create this variable. So you can name it as you would like, and just copy the string that or paste the string that you copied from the MongoDB, and make sure to add the name of the database over here, and you can get it from here. That's the name of your database, and also make sure to copy your password over here. And once you've done this step, I created a new folder. I called it libs, and inside of it, I created the mongodb .js file. And before we can use that, make sure to install the Mongoose. So type in npm install mongoose to be able to interact with our MongoDB. And as you can see over here, we are importing the mongoose from mongoose, and we are creating this function because that's the function that we're going to use to connect to MongoDB in each HTTP request. And here we are using the try and catch method. And in this line, we are connected to our MongoDB and we are using the URL that we created in the .env file. And we are just logging out the connected to MongoDB message. And if it is an error, we are going to console, we're going to log out the error. And to be able to test that out, so what I did, just for testing purposes, I imported it over here. And as you can see, we're having this message connected to MongoDB, and that indicates that everything is going fine and we are establishing a connection with our database. And the next thing that we are going to do, we need to create a schema to be able to interact with our collection in the database. And basically, the schema is just a blueprint or a structure of our data. And to be able to do so, so the first thing, just for organization, I created the models folder, and inside of it, I created the node schema.js file, and I imported it, the mongoose and the schema, and this is the object that we're going to use to create our schema. And for before I start explaining this, so I want to mention that in each node we're having 4 elements. So we're having the date, we're having the title, we're having the content, and we're having the categories, which is an array of categories. So let's go back to our file, and this is what we're doing over here. So that's the title, and the type is going to be string. The content is going to be string as well. For the date creation, the type is going to be date, and also we can set the default value, and here it's going to be the current date if we don't set the date when we are creating our node into the database. So automatically it's going to generate for us the current date without having any errors. And lastly, we're having the categories, and the type it's going to be an array. And this is what we're doing. So inside of this, to be able to assign it as an array, so this is how you can do it. And finally, in this line, what we are doing, we are actually creating our schema. So first, if when the schema wasn't created, so we're going to go to this line and we are going to create our schema with this node. Um, and if it has already been created, we're going to go to this to be able to extract our node schema, and we need to export it because we're going to use it to be able to interact with our database. So after creating our schema, the next thing that we're going to do, we are going to create our routes. And since we're using the Next.js, we have the ability to create our routes inside our project. So the first thing that you need to do, create a new folder called API inside the app folder. And inside of this API folder, create the nodes folder. And inside the nodes folder, we're going to be creating the route.js file. And this is where we are going to add all the HTTP requests. I'd notice here I already created one. So this is the post request. So we need some information first. So we need to create them. And this is the actual code to be able to create our node. So I'm going to explain each thing step by step. So the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to get the information from the request .json. And because the file or the information is a JSON file, so we need to use the JSON function over here. And This is so we are extracting the information. So as we said in our notes, we're having the child, the content, and the categories. And the reason why we didn't use the data because it's going to be generated by default. So once we're having the information, we're going to use our note model and um, MongoDB has built-in functions to be able to do all the operations into database. So we're going to use the create function, and we are going to use the information that we extracted from the request. And over here, we are going to just return to the client, the message, and the status. And because we're using the try and catch block, and if it is an error, we're going to go straight to this line. And uh, the first thing that we need to do, we need to first test our endpoints. And for that, I'm using the Thunder client. So this is the window to be able to test your endpoints and to be able to install it. It's very easy. Just go to the extensions over here and just type in Thunder and click on the Thunder client and install it. And once you installed it, just use the Control and Shift and P and click on the new request, and this window will be opened. So right now we need to create, as we said, our new node. So make sure to select post and make sure to end add this endpoint, sorry, and click on the body. And this is our body. This is the request that I talked about inside here. So this is the request. And as I said, since it is a JSON file, we need to add the JSON over here. And so I'm going to click on the send. And notice that the node has been created and the status is 200, meaning that everything was great. And we will go back to our MongoDB and we are going to refresh our database or our collection. And here our node that we just created, so meaning that everything was great and we're having our node into the database. So the next thing that we are going to create is our get method to be able to get the information. So here is the function. So just call it get. And as we did for the post method, we're going to use the try and catch method. We're going to connect to the MongoDB, and then we're going to use the find method from Mongoose to be able to get all the nodes inside our database. And we are going to return the all nodes and the status. Otherwise, if we're having an error, we're going to return and the error and the status is going to be 500. And as we saw, we need first to test that out. So before I test, before I'm going to test, or before I did test the get method, I did create or added some notes. So like, so make sure to select the get, and we're gonna stick with this endpoint, and we are going to click send. And notice that right now we're having all the nodes, and those are that I created with the post method. So now once we created our get and post method, what we are going to do, we are going to use that in our application. And the first thing that we need to go to, we need to go to the context API. This is where we are firstly or initially loading our nodes data. And over here, as you notice, I created a new function. So I'm using the fetch function to be able to get the data from our database. So that's our endpoint. And make sure to add the cache as no store because we want, by doing this, we are going to disable the caching. and we are getting the data from the res.json, and we are extracting from the data the all nodes variable, and we are updating our all nodes variable state with the actual data that we got from the database, and we're doing the same thing for the initial all nodes because those were inside the use effects, and since we're using them inside the get nodes from MongoDB, there is no use to add them over here again. So, and make sure to add the function to be able to call it once the application is initially loaded up. And also one minor issue that I encountered and that I fixed, because in our schema, what we were doing for the properties over here, I created the title and the content, and for our application, we didn't use this. We did use the node name and the node content. So that's what I did. So I changed our schema like this, and also I changed the actual variable to be able to create a new schema, and that's what I did. So I just changed the node to my node to be able to have that. And because initially when I just changed the properties, it wasn't working. And because when I was doing this, I wasn't having the node name and the node content over here. So I had to do this to be able to have these two properties inside the database. And of course, into the route folder, make sure to change the node with my node, and also do the same thing over here. And now, as you can see, so when we go to our application, so I'm going to go back to the sender client to show you all the information over here. And notice like all the information that we're having here are inside our application, um, and everything is working fine at this moment. And the next thing that we are going to work on, we are going to add our endpoint, our um, to create when we want to create, or we're going to add the post endpoint or HTTP requests when we want to create a new node over here. And now we can be able to add the node into the database as well. So let's create a new node. So I'm going to just call it test and also type in test over here. And I'm going to choose fitness as a category. And when I'm going to click save, we're going to have the loading word over here, because there is a little bit of time gap because we are creating the node into the database, and it doesn't happen instantly. So that's why we're having this loading word inside the button. And notice that the node has been created successfully over here. And if we go back to our database and refresh our collection, we will find it over here just to check if everything is working well. So to be able to add the nodes from the application that we created into the database, so the first thing that we need to do a little adjustment over here inside the post method. And the idea here, so I'm going to go to the note window. I'm trying to explain that. So what we were doing, we were creating the ID from this package or library that we were using. And so when we are working with the database, when we are working with the database, we need first to extract the ID that we created and use it into the front end. So that's why we are doing this. So we need to get the ID from the server. So that's why I added this inside the new node variable, and I'm returning the ID from this variable, and those are going to be the same. And inside here, inside the node window, what I did here, I created a new function. I called it add new nodes to DB. So this is where the code that we are going to use to be able to create the actual node that we want inside the database. So this is the actual code. So we are going to use the fetch method, and we're going to use the post method. Um, and also here we are passing the information that we typed into the text into the server. And once we're having a successful response, so that's why we're using rest.ok. So then we are going to get the response from the server, and then we are going to add the actual ID that exists into the server, and those are going to be the same that we used for the fields, and make sure to add the dot creation over here. And we are gonna return the successful message from by using the toast library, and we are gonna update our variables over here to be rendered into our application. And notice also I added something over here. I added this set is loading because to be able to show the loading text or word when we type in when we click on the save, make sure to add this loading and the set is loading here. And what we're going to do first when we trying to create our node into database, we're going to set it to true. And after finishing that, we're going to set it to false. And this meaning that only we are gonna close our window when the is loading is false. And make sure to go at the bottom in the JSX over here, and that's the save button. So to be able to show the loading, so we're going to use the turn operator. If the is loading is true, that's the loading text that's going to be shown. Otherwise, it's going to be save. And the next operation that we are going to create is the delete function. And to be able to do that, the first thing that we need to do, we need, of course, delete the node from the database and go to the route.js, and we're going to create the delete function. And to be able to access to the delete, we're going to use the query from the URL. So I'm going to explain that further when we are going to start testing our endpoint. So the first thing that we're going to do, we need to get the ID from the query parameters. And in order to be able to access to that, we're going to use the next URL, that's search params.get, and we're going to store our ID. Next, we're going to connect to the MongoDB. Then we're going to use the find by ID and delete method to be able to delete the ID that we got from the query into the database, and we're going to return to the client this message: node has been deleted successfully. And of course, if it is an error, we're going to return the error message. So let's go to the Thunder client, and here we're having our nodes. So I'm going to take this and change to the delete request and go to the query and type in ID, and the value it's going to be the actual ID that we want. So this is the query that I talked about inside this function. So let's hit send, and notice the message, the node has been deleted successfully. And if we check all the nodes by using the get method and click send, notice that the node is not in our database. So the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to use that into application. Specifically, we're going to use that into the node window as we did for the function when we want to add our Note, sorry, we're gonna use the delete function inside the dropdown uh, because this is where we can be able to click on the delete function or the delete button to delete the node that we want. So inside our delete node function, so we added some code here and we did a little bit of adjustments because right now, since we are gonna delete the node inside the MongoDB, we need again to use the fetch method, and we're gonna use the delete method that we just created. So after that, we're gonna store that into the res variable. So if it is okay, we're gonna trigger this code to be able to delete the code or the node, sorry, in our application. And we're going to stick with the same code that we're having. The only difference that we are need to make is the ID property. Since we're changed the ID property to the underscore ID, make sure to add them both in filter all nodes and filter initial nodes variable state to avoid having any issues. And again, we are going to update our all nodes and initial all nodes variable states. And we're going to set the click category to null, and we're going to show the successful message. And the same for the node selected is going to be null after deleting the actual node. And of course, if it is an error, we're going to show this message. And I'm going to show you how it is working. So I just created this node. I called it test. So let's select the ID as category. And after selecting yes, do you really want to delete this node? This node, yes. And as you can see, the node is not here anymore. And notice we're back to the old category because there is no node inside the idea because the only node that has the ideas category has been deleted. So since we're not having any ideas category, we're going to go back to the old category to show all the nodes that we're having in our application. And the last operation that we are going to work on is the modification. And first thing that we need to do, we need to add the put method because this is what we're going to use to be able to modify our nodes or our content inside the database. So go to the route.js and create a new function. I call it put, and the request it's going to be as the argument to be able to get the information from the client. And here it's going to be a little bit different because we are going to use the query to be able to get the ID, but also at the same time we are going to use the body from the client to extract the information that we want to update. So here we did the same for the delete method, and we're going to use the find by ID built-in method from Mongoose to get our ID. And then we are going to get the information from the client, and we are going to extract those three elements since that we are going to change these three elements. And over here, we are going to update directly our um, nodes inside the database by the new content that we got from the client. And then we are going to save it by using the save built-in method from Mongoose. And finally, we are going to return this message. And first, we need to test that out. So I already have a note over here, so I already checked all the notes to be able to get the ID. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this and go to the query and add the ID over here and paste the ID that we want to test with and go to the body, and those are the elements that we are going to use to be able to change the content that we want. So I'm going to just type in new title, and over here I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to say new content, and the category it's going to be IDS. So those are the elements that I want to change inside this note. So after clicking on send, the message says that the note has been updated successfully, meaning that everything was great. So let's check all the notes again. And as you can see for this note, for this ID, the new content that we want has been updated in this note successfully. So the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to add this as we did inside the note window over here to be able to update the note in the front end part. So make sure to create a new function. I called it update note in DB. You can call it wherever you want. And as we did for the add note to DB function, we're going to use the same principle. We're going to use the trend catch block, and we're using the fetch method to be able to fetch to use the endpoint, and this is the endpoint that we're going to use, and we're using the ID as the query, and the method is going to be put, of course, and we are going to pass in the information in a JSON file, and to be able to do that in here, we're going to use the JSON.stringify, and make sure to add make sure that these properties or their names are the same as we were having over here. So let's go back to the note window functional component, and if everything is okay, we're using the same code that we're having over here. The only change that I did because we changed the ID property to underscore ID, so that's why I did over here, and all of that is going to be the same. And make sure to add the set open window note over here because we want to make sure when the operation ends and is loading is became false, then we can be able to close our window. So that's basically how we can be able to update our note in React. So I'm going to show you how it is working. So already made some modification to be able to know that it worked. So I'm going to do it again. So let's change the title, and I'm going to add something over here, and let's add project as a category. That's a new one, and hit save. And notice we're having the loading text, and then the actual note has been updated. And when I load the page again, we're going to find the information that we updated persistent, meaning that they were updated successfully into the database. There you have it. We have a full stack and complete Node app, and we are handling the backend and the front end successfully. And then that's a great project to be able to learn how to use databases and how to work with the backend as well with the front end. So if you like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up and also the notification button to be notified whenever I release a video like this. And also don't forget to leave a comment down below section and let me know what you think about this project and what are your thoughts about how I did to be able to create that.